Managing inventory is tough. You know, as you start to grow and you get to a certain level, it's one of the biggest hurdles. I did a Christmas that I just was like, there's no way I can do this myself anymore. And I was working out of my house. We decided to use a what you would hear of as a 3PL, so a fulfillment center.
What questions should they be asking them when they're trying to find someone like that?
I just want to say, like, I don't think David could have picked a better spot for us to sit around and talk about e-commerce and building a brand. Like yesterday, we watched wild horses walk out into the water and eat and drink. And then today we had a group of dolphins
come through right there.
It's like,
not even, and don't forget the pirate ship. And,
This is just like,
there's a pirate ship and he has his little boat that he goes around.
How often do you think he actually works over here? Do you think David does any work?
It would be easy to get distracted.
Yeah,
for sure.
It is, but it's calming. Looking at the water is calming. You know,
that's true. It's very grounding. I noticed
that's where he comes up with new ideas for product.
Absolutely,
dolphins.
Well, when you get new product, you have to source it, and I think that's kind of what we're going to roll into today. So
yeah, tell us about this product sourcing thing. What is it? And
so
for you, how did it work?
Yep. So for us, we originally started. We were using a global trade broker, and so this is somebody that works with factories. They have relationships with factories, all around the world, and for lots of different products. And there's, different global trade brokers that specialize in different, areas of manufacturing and sourcing of products. And so, if you have a product that you're looking to source, that can be a good option where, a lot of times if you're just reaching out to somebody on, Alibaba or, one of these websites, you don't really know who you're speaking with, but that global trade broker will take a lot of that risk and, they have those established relationships and you can work with them. However, the downside is that you're going to pay about, roughly 10% or so, of whatever you're ordering. So you have a, $100,000 worth of inventory, you're going to pay, $110,000 total for that. So
any minimums usually with them, like for you, at what point do you say, I'd probably need this?
Yeah. I mean, it was,
we'll need 100K worth of product,
no,
10K,
no.
20K. What is it like?
It was much smaller than that, of course, to begin with. So, I mean, I think, $5,000 or $10,000 worth of product, and they were happy. And even now, we work still with that same global trade broker to source some of our bags, and they just we have a good price on them, and it's worth still going through it with them. But that's a very, very small invoices, so they obviously don't mind to work for smaller invoices.
And go to the negative side. If you don't use one of those people you don't know, you send them your money, and
you hope that you get the product.
You send them a third down. You give them a third when they say that it's done, and then a third when it hits the dock. Well, I know of at least 50 store owners that have made those 2/3 payments and never reached the dock.
Wow, so that's unfortunate.
Do that on a couple cartons of goods. You saying that 10%, I think to myself, like, okay, on $100,000, you spent 110, so you have 5 orders that cost you 50,000 total, but you got all 5 of your orders.
Exactly.
They spent 50,000 and never got a single thing, and then they had to buy it again, and they're 3 months, 30 days more longer behind.
And so what eventually happened, we worked with that global trade broker, and then factories start reaching out, so they're starting to see that you're, selling, product that they're making. And so they start reaching out. And so, that's eventually how we ended up working with who we, currently work with, our manufacturer, and have been with him for, 8+ years, at least. So I named my dog after him. That's how much I love him.
That's awesome.
Dang,
he's
that's
amazing.
love.
That's awesome.
It is. I say it every day, 100 times a day.
That's cool. So, you using that trade broker, you get your product in. Now, what are you doing with inventory? How do you do this? Like, people think, David's probably got a little room back here in the corner where he keeps all the belts, and an order comes in, and him and his team get together. And obviously, there's different methods for different people. But for you, how do you hold and use inventory?
Yeah. So, when we started, I was doing all the fulfilling. So at first my father was doing it out of his condo, and then I was doing it out of my basement.
And when you say fulfilling, please
So fulfilling means, packing up the order, getting the product together, putting it into your packaging, packing up the order. And for us, that meant, putting a wax stamp and all that stuff for the packaging. And so I had finally, I did a Christmas that I just was like, there's no way I can do this myself anymore. And I was working out of my house. So at that point, you either have the option of, continuing on and trying to build a facility, and then, having employees that are going to help you and run a warehouse and all of that overhead. And so, we really, kind of did the math. And when we were doing, the numbers that we were at that time, it really didn't make sense, excuse me, to take on an entire, fulfillment or an entire warehouse where we're, having that many employees. Yeah, a lot of costs and a lot of risk with that. So we decided to use a what you would hear of as a 3PL. So a fulfillment center that, basically does all of your fulfilling. They store your product. They do all the picking and packing, which basically means, picking the product off the shelf, packing it into the boxes, and then shipping it out. So they're responsible for all of the orders that they come into our, in through our system. It flows through to them. They know what's on each order, where to send it, and they work on that on a daily basis, or 5 days a week.
Curiosity, the number of orders you do is significant now. What is their misship or error percentage?
It is really low. I mean, super low. The biggest thing that will happen is there'll be, 2 of something that was ordered, 2 of a particular product that was ordered, and somebody just misses that they should have sent 2 instead of 1. So that's the biggest thing. But as far as, different or wrong products, it's so few and far between that, so much so that, we like to get an image, because it's a lot of times it may be, a misunderstanding. Yeah, exactly. So
okay,
so they have a really, really good track record,
and that matters in your fulfillment center. So that is, I think that's a question that people should ask when they're looking.
Absolutely.
What is your statistical?
And they'll usually tell you. I mean, they know, the guys that really have it dialed in. They know that I have the 99.1. Misship rate, something like that.
So those are questions people should ask a fulfillment center. Like some of those are the kind of, what questions should they be asking them when they're trying to find someone like that?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to need to look at, what's it going to take for storage? What kind of other administrative
Are there hidden fees?
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
What are some of those hidden fees that people don't think about at all?
Well,
just curious.
They will charge you for storage, unless you can get them where, if you are doing enough orders, that then they're
pushing it through.
They're rotating that space through. Then they consider it okay. You're going to pay a minimum charge, for the square footage, until you get to a certain number of orders per day. Once you hit that number,
and a lot of times it'll be by pallet size as well. However many pallets.
Yeah, it's how much space you're taking up.
Yeah, and so
does that come into the planning that you have? What you're bringing in then, as far as any of that strategy?
Not really. I mean, it's kind of we need it, and
I think early on probably, but at his point, he's his spot.
So thinking about that, how important is it to build those relationships with those that you trust, from supplier all the way through the fulfillment center, and keeping that quality? And in your case, I feel like you've got it dialed in pretty good. Tell us a little bit about that, and what does that allow you to do as a business owner then?
Yeah, I mean, having that relationship with your supplier is crucial. To have that trust that I have with him and he has with us, and so. There's a lot of benefits to that, whether it's, leeway with invoices or, things like that. And, he's really helped us a lot with that. Or if it's, working with a fulfillment center and, them understanding you and how you do things and what you expect. And, so quality control, is a big,
so are they the one that dings the product? It comes in. So say you make an order, it goes directly to them. Are they the ones kind of going through it? Are they the one that notify you hey man, we got a batch here that just don't look right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of trust.
If you think about it, he could do everything perfect in his business, and if they mess up,
or if they don't let us know that, hey, we
don't
get
let you know is the biggest.
We get a shipment in and there's scratches on the straps, and and that's even happened recently. So they basically, they'll notice on the floor, hey, we're coming across a lot of these, and so we need to notify Anson. And so they'll reach out and show us pictures, and we'll say, okay, now we need to, do a work order and pull, all the ones that are damaged and figure out, which ones are good and which ones are bad. And then let your supplier know, hopefully a lot of these suppliers will work with you, for damaged product. I mean, we've been lucky enough that they've always replaced anything that was messed up, and so, and then, like we've talked about before, you'll eventually kind of train them on what you expect, and then those will really start to decrease because they don't like to replace them, so.
Managing inventory, thinking about, okay, so now you've decided this is how you're going to manage your inventory. This is how you're going to hold it. This is who you're going to partner with. Now, figuring out, You know, what is my product one? When should I have more? When should I have less? Like, talk about what in the world that means. Like, what does that mean if you're ordering things overseas? How long does it take to get here? Like, when are you planning for things? Like, all that process a little bit.
Yeah,
managing inventory.
Managing inventory is tough. That's one of the, as you start to grow and you get to a certain level, it's one of the biggest, hurdles and one of the biggest, one of our biggest challenges is trying to make sure that, we have enough inventory, because you have to be thinking about it months ahead of time. And because for one, you want to get it sent by sea. So you don't want to have to get it sent by air.
Air's too much.
Much cheaper to get it sent by sea. So you need to be forecasting this stuff, 3-4 months in advance, knowing that, okay, this is what's coming up. So we're already, our Christmas order's in. I mean, we've, have thought about that a long time ago. And so you've got to, to know what you have so that you can know what you can work with. And a great example of that is this last Christmas. We just had an incredible Christmas. We blew it out of the water and really kind of broke the system, because, eventually we were kind of flying blind for a little bit. Our fulfillment center, you put all this trust in them, and, they have problems too. They're a business.
Sure.
and they have, things that can come up. And so, something on their end wasn't working correctly. And we were kind of flying blind for a few days on inventory. And so, had a lot of logistical nightmares that come with that. And, so we had to, it was really, a customer service kind of, it was, all hands on deck to make sure that all of our customers were, aware of what was going on and how we were going to make it right. And then, trying to figure out, okay, how do we prevent this in the future? And I realized that, you're only going to be able to sell as much inventory as you have, so we, and that's kind of a novel idea, but, we always, as a marketer and someone that, I'm always trying to get sales, it's like, you want to push and push and push and push and like, okay, they're coming, and then it's like, wow, if something like that happens, then, and it breaks and, then it can be a mess. But if it had, if their systems, had gone as planned, then it wouldn't. But stuff like that's gonna happen. So yeah, you got to be.
So when things break like this, what did you learn from it? Like when it all broke down like that, what did you learn from it? One, I'll never run out of inventory. Yeah, like what were the things that you learned from both from a organizational process to a front facing to your customer process that you hadn't experienced quite that before, right?
No, nothing quite like that. And the biggest thing is knowing, okay, how much inventory you have so you can know how much you can do daily. So you really have to say, okay, we're not going to be getting in another shipment until, the end of January or whatever it may be, So if you're working over the holidays and you know that you're not going to get another shipment until then, you have to kind of divide up, okay, how much in sales, can we do? How much in inventory do we have, in wholesale inventory? How much in sales can we do? In order to do that, whatever it is a day, you can do that for the next, 30, 45 days until that shipment comes in. And that's something that we never really broke down that granular of saying, okay, we can't do more than, X amount a day, for the next 15 days. It's not sustainable. We're going to be out. And then when you run out of buckles, in our case, you don't sell many belts. So it was, a lesson in understanding what you have to work with before you just go, completely, pedal to the metal and really, push it hard. You really have to know what you have to work with. So now, moving forward, we're really going to take a look at what can we do daily, what can we sustain and, how much inventory we have. So
cool. Any takeaways? Any final thoughts on this, Matt? David?
No, I know that us helping brands at scale, that's the topic that comes up a lot. And if you're not conscious of it, you create a customer service nightmare that just actually implodes. And so growth is awesome, but it can also be really dangerous.
Yeah.
And so slow and steady, like you said, is great. There is ways to speed it up or make it a little quicker and steady. But for sure, people that just go pedal to the metal without forecasting and doing those other things, bad things happen to good people. So you can have a great business and make some bad decisions, and it's going to affect you long term.
Yeah, and I think that how you handle that situation and how you handle the, whatever issue it is, we had customers I was speaking with, and they're like, look, hey, no problem. I understand things happen, but it's how you handle it, and make it right that matters. And they're like, and you did a great job. So
manage expectations.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yep. Communication to your customer is the biggest. I mean, that's key.
Yeah. And even once he sold out, we changed the the languaging on the site. So people
to make it clear that,
when they were buying, they weren't going to get it for X amount of time. And so they weren't buying it. And then, hey, where's my order?
Yep. Or we weren't even, I mean, we weren't even selling at that point, anything that was out of stock, but kind of letting them know that you were currently out of buckles is some of the messaging that.
Something you thought you'd never say.
Yeah. So, and when to expect more. So.
Cool. That's it, man. Yeah.